What's up, everybody? Welcome back to the season finale, season 8, episode 21 of At Home with Mark. And I've got my friend Todd Anthony Puma on the show today, who runs the Gibson Murphy Lab Instagram account. We're going to get into a lot of Gibson talk today, and guitar talk, and amp talk, all the nerdery. But dude, we've been talking for a minute. This is cool to hang out, man. Thanks for doing this.
Oh, thanks for having me, man. Yes, we've been having a lot of conversations based on what you've been seeing and a couple other cool guitars that you're looking for.
Yeah, it's kind of the rabbit hole got so deep, and at some point, dude, I don't know when it was. I'm sure you saw I just got that Yamaha Revstar.
That thing looks awesome.
Dude, I'm telling you, man, like I went to a music shop near me that had one, and it was like highlighter yellow, and I was like, no, there's no way I can play that guitar. And anyone saw me that knows me on stage with that guitar, they'd be like, what are you doing? But when I picked it up, and it's just like the standard one, the one that's like $700, $800, whatever. I was like, I am so impressed how well this guitar plays, how comfortable it is, the weight. It's like a chambered body. And I was like, I'm going to buy one, because the difference between me getting that or getting a Les Paul Special right now is another $700, $800.
Right, you got two guitars at that point.
Yeah, because I got this one used for like around $650-ish or so. And man, it's a killer guitar, dude. Like I am very, very impressed. And I knew it played well because I played the one in the shop. But have you played one at all?
No, I haven't, but I'm actually interested in trying one, especially that you said it was chambered. That's got me going now. That's my new thing, is going for chambered guitars. Don't know why, just started.
Well, is it because you've been playing Les Pauls forever that are 9 pounds?
That might be the thing. It might be my age, actually.
Dude, I mean, it's real, man. If you're standing on stage for 3 hours, like that's a lot to keep on your shoulders for that amount of time, unless you got a nice wide strap.
Yeah, I don't have a wide strap. I went with the thinnest I could find. They give me as much pain as I would ever want. Who doesn't want that amount of pain?
I know, right? You got like pinched nerve in your shoulder, dude.
I actually do. Which is kind of funny. That's from many years, I guess, we'll say, because of the guitar.
Yeah.
And dealing with that many pounds, I guess something happened, because it's all right over here. And I was in shock when I went and I got diagnosed for that. I was like, what? I was like, I'm never going to tell anybody that. So anybody who's listening to this doesn't even know what happened.
That's funny, dude. I mean, I'm not a doctor. I just play one on TV. So that's why I just diagnosed you. But that's a pretty easy, snag there. I mean, if you're because have you been playing Les Pauls your whole life?
I have. Yeah. It's been my thing.
Okay. Because, man, it's those guitars. I had a Les Paul Studio when I was a kid. Like, that was my first nice guitar.
Same here.
And that thing was heavy as hell.
What color was it? Wine red?
No, it was black.
Oh, nice. That's all they had, is the wine red and black, I think.
Yeah. Point. I think the wine red one I thought was, which is hilarious, I thought was too flashy. So the black with the chrome and stuff, I was like, that'll work for me. But I just remember playing that for a couple years and feeling like it didn't fit me, and it felt like heavy. And like I'm way taller now, obviously, than I was when I had that guitar. Because that would have been like 8th and 9th grade that I had that guitar. But man, yeah, it's no joke. I mean, they're heavy. And then, when you're playing a 4-hour gig, I didn't do that when I was 13, but like I can imagine now it would probably bug me.
Oh yeah, especially rehearsal time. Do you practice a little bit beforehand just to do sound check and get everything kind of working, or you go right in?
Yeah, no, for us, I mean, it's set up, go right in kind of thing.
Yeah.
So, but let me ask you. Let's start with the normal, because it wouldn't be At Home with Mark if I didn't ask you what your earliest musical memory was.
Wow. And actually, this is going to go back to tie into why I play guitar in the first place. I remember when I was a kid, and then I was by my brother's girlfriend's house, and they were doing whatever they were doing in the other room. And I was sitting there watching cable, and MTV came on. And then suddenly I saw Guns N' Roses, and I see Paradise City, and I see Slash playing the guitar just like a badass. And I'm like, that's what I want to do. Mm-hmm. This is who I want to be like. This is what I inspire my musical taste to replicate and then develop. As a kid, like my whole future just came into play. And that moment to me is the reason why I play guitar. And also I do what I do for a living with the home automation business. It's all because of that memory, that and November Rain. Those are the two like biggest memories that I have.
It's funny how like our generation was so impressionable by that. Cause like for me, it was Nirvana and Pearl Jam. Like when I saw that, that's what like made me feel like, oh, that's speaking to me. And I don't know if I just like, I think I just missed the cutoff for Guns N' Roses in terms of me falling in love with that band. Like I was just past that cusp, because I had older siblings, and I think, you know, I heard that music in the house, and I had some friends who were like huge Use Your Illusion fans. But for some reason, it never kind of came across my plate. I don't know what happened there, why I missed it. There's a bunch of bands from that era that I just never got into, funnily enough. I don't know why. It's strange.
But that tends to happen. We kind of go back to things that we never listened to, because that's what I'm doing is I'm rediscovering bands that I didn't listen to as a kid versus what I listened to consistently. Like I would listen to Radiohead, you know, Nine Inch Nails, Guns N' Roses, Atreyu, you know, All That Remains. Like I was all over the place musically, and every single band that I listened to was similar to those bands. It's really kind of like a little circle of music, and all my friends listened to that. That's what we covered. We played, you know, live. And then suddenly, you know, as it moved on, I started at, you know, through these years is going back and listening to music that like, I forget what the band is called now because I've been going back and forth, but it's kind of like, you know, that song Ocean Drive. It's like an old school, you know, late 2000s Yellow Card. So I started listening to them. Like I never would have listened to them as a kid. But then you go back and you realize how much quality the music has and how exciting it is. And then you think to yourself, why did I not listen to this back then? I would have had more fun. Now I'm old. Can't do anything.
Well, it was like lack of like now we have so much, you know, availability. Like music is everywhere. Like we can listen to it. We can have a, you know, iTunes, or no, what is it called now? Apple Music, like, and Spotify, and like we can listen to anything we want. Whereas when we were younger, man, like we had to like go to the store and buy the CD, and like the only way to be exposed is listen to the radio or watch MTV. Not everybody had MTV, so a lot of people, it was just radio exposure,
right? Or whatever their friends played. And I remember we used to make a lot of copies of cassettes and make mixtapes. Versus now, it's like it's kind of like oversaturated with music, and I feel like people aren't really understanding what music is all about because they're no longer searching for it. It's just coming to them in mass fold, just kind of like TV shows. Like people would ask me, "Oh, did you watch this TV show yet?" I don't know. Yeah, I did, because I can't even remember a season of what happened, you know, in the last TV show or what. I can't even tell you what the last. Oh, I know it was Fallout, but that was a good one out of all of them.
I've started that. I haven't. I've got like 2 episodes in, so I'm not.
Oh, so good.
Don't spoil me. But
so what happens at the end? No.
I love the like concept of people taking video games now and making them into this cool storyline, because it's all, I mean, like I grew up reading comic books. I love the comic book movies, and you know, there's so many great storylines and so many great characters. Like, why not go there? You know what I mean?
You should.
Yeah, man. Let me ask you this. So, okay, so you see Guns N' Roses, you're hypnotized by that, you're really into it. And is that a moment when you're like immediately, how do I get a guitar? Like, how does that happen? Like, how can I get a guitar?
It happened actually many years later, kind of where you were. I was about 15, 16 in high school, and me and my friends used to cut all the time. And we used to sit in his room and he would play guitar. I would watch him, and I would watch him do the tabs, and he would show me based on the numbers what it meant. And he would take these really long showers. I don't know why. And maybe he's extra clean, but he was taking very long showers. So I had a lot of time to learn on my own. But with that being said, that's when I started around 15, 16 years old. But I went all in for what I remember as a kid. So I went right for Guns N' Roses. I went right for I think I started with Bush, because you have to start with something that's like, you know, a 2-year-old could do. Right. And then you got to work yourself up to Guns N' Roses, because that stuff for me at the time was like, whoa, how is he doing any of that? I had no idea.
Did you feel like you had since you watched your friend, did you feel like you had time to know what like power chords were, and you like were able to get your hands adjusted to that? Because I feel like that's the learning curve that a lot of kids hit, where they jump ship because they're like, I can't get my hands to stay in the right position. Like, did you feel like you had a leg up because you had a lot of exposure to that stuff early on?
I never thought of it that way before, but I do remember, actually, as you were asking the question, is I remember him stretching my fingers for the power chords, and then he would show me a couple of things. And then he told me, which I never forgot, is based on the strings, like Ed and Dan go buy eggs. I was like, oh, and that's how I remembered it consistently. And I kind of learned what notes are on the board is based upon that one way he put it. So if someone puts something in an easy way, like when I go looking through YouTube videos, like everyone's teaching how to do the scale, how to get faster, how to sound more bluesy, how to do phrasing. But there's only one person that could speak to me, just like that person who's speaking to me isn't speaking to someone else. It's the same exact way.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. I mean, it's funny. I talked to so many people about that stuff, and like sticking with an instrument in and of itself is a miracle. You know, like if you are like super into it, obviously, hopefully, there's a lot of people who get into playing piano or get into playing guitar or the drums. And if they love it enough, they will stick with it. But like, there's a period of time, like, especially in high school, man, when it switches to like social, endeavors with friends, like girlfriends, boyfriends, whatever. And then you're kind of like distracted from it. So that was your escape, right? But now it's like, now you have so much going on in your life. It's like, where do you find the time? But that's not most people. I feel like you stick with it, like me. Like I locked myself in my room after school every day, and that's where like the nerddom kind of comes in, where you're like, man, this is something that I want as part of my life.
Do you remember that feeling, like how good it felt, like when you would learn something for the first time, or you would be able to get that note that whoever it is you were trying to copy was playing? Like that moment is the reason why I stuck with this. I always try to keep enriched with that memory of how that felt, because we're always learning something new. But I felt as I gotten older, I'm not as excited about the new thing I learned, because it's like, I should have learned that like 25 years ago. Why am I learning this right now? So I'm kind of annoyed by it versus, excited about the new note choices I've picked based on a mode that I can't even pronounce.
Right. Dude, I mean, I get that way all the time. I mean, it fires me up every time I'm learning something new. Last night when I was getting ready to go to bed, I was like watching something on Instagram, and it was like Rick Beato put up a video of Guthrie Trapp and Tom Bukovac, and like Guthrie Trapp was playing something. You know him? Do you know about that dude? And I was like, oh my God, I am going to screen grab this whole thing and I'm going to put it into a slowdown, and so I can figure out what he's doing, because it was the most phenomenal. He was playing an acoustic guitar, and it was the most hip shit that I have heard in quite some time. Especially, I know he's a great player, and I've had him on the show, and he's amazing. But what he did in that moment with that instrument, I was like, that is something I need to learn. Like,
there's those wow moments,
Yeah, I mean,
they don't come that often.
Not a lot. And it's in those moments, like when you can figure out what someone is doing too, and you can kind of, I do this, maybe not everyone does this, but like I try to, like, if I'm learning something, not just learn the notes, but learn the theory behind what is he doing. Because like he's throwing in all these, arpeggios and stuff, and I know he's doing that, but like, why is that note in the middle of that arpeggio? That's, alluding to this chord change, or that, you know what I mean? So it's like, that's the stuff that's cool, that kind of gets the snowball rolling down the hill, and you're like, oh wow, okay, now I know how to use this.
Now you put it into your arsenal of notes.
Yeah, because you have to kind of steal from your favorite players to become your own person.
Oh, of course.
At some point, it's going to happen.
You can hear it from all the players we listen to. Once you researched who they liked, you're like, oh yeah, that says, and then you start going down that rabbit hole.
That's how it was for me. I mean, you probably have the same thing with Slash, but my relationship with Mike McCready was like, I was like, oh my God, like I love Mike McCready. And then finding out, okay, he's a huge, fan of Hendrix. He's a huge fan of Stevie Ray Vaughan. And like, who are those people? Like, I found out about Pearl Jam before I knew who Jimi Hendrix and Stevie Ray Vaughan was. And man. I mean, it's like, it's going backwards. And then I have to go back, and then I'm like, okay, then who did Stevie listen to? Who did Jimmy listen to? Like, why do they play the way that they play? And that's like, it's a continual, you have to distill it over and over and over again to kind of get to the root of what music was birthed that inspired these players that we all will forever be in awe of,
Right. And what is the only universal language that's left over is music. It's the only thing you could do in order to express yourself without physical words. And to me, that's beautiful, because there's two things to guarantee: water will flow, and music will speak to everyone, no matter what, you speak naturally. You could understand it.
Yeah. That's why I feel like it's like you can go to any country and play a song. And if you're in Japan and you're singing in English, they're still going to know what you're getting across and the emotion of the tune and all that stuff.
That's good.
I love that stuff, dude. That's so killer.
It is.
So let me ask you, so then what was your first guitar? Was your first guitar a Les Paul?
It was a Les Paul Studio.
Okay,
I
so
had
it was the wine red one? Okay.
Yeah. But I wanted the black one. I was so disappointed.
Oh,
I remember that. I was like, oh, I want the black one, but they only had that. And I
what
was
was
okay
that?
with it.
Okay, so you were like, I'll wait for the black, guitar. I'm like,
No.
Okay.
No, I was just like, I want that, because I had the opportunity from my parents, and we didn't have a lot of money. So when they were ready to spend, I was like, let's go.
Right. Yeah. You got to take advantage of that while you
Yeah, at the moment.
What pickups were in that guitar at the time? Do you remember what was in that?
Yeah, they were. That's why I still play them. Is the 57 classics were in mine.
Okay.
That I had, and they're Nico 2s, I believe. So
Okay.
From there, my ears always loved that magnet, loved the mid-range push with the classical, S kind of tone that we had from like Jimmy Page and Jeff Beck, and the list goes on and on.
Okay. Did you get into, so like I know you for putting a lot of pictures of Les Pauls up. Did you get into other Gibsons throughout the time that you've been playing guitar, or have you kind of stuck tried and true to that instrument?
No, I tried a lot of different instruments. Like I always wanted to have a relationship with a Fender Strat, because two of my favorite players of all time, played them. Like, I would be trying to cover a Pink Floyd song and be using a Les Paul, but I wanted to use a Fender. It's just that there's something to Strat when I would play it. I just never could build that relationship or get excited about what I was doing. So what I did is I put that to a Les Paul. I did the push-pull pods, and I tried to come as close to possible to that Fender sound. But I bought it, and I'm going to still do the same thing when I go to Nashville this week. I'm going to pick up a Stratocaster, and I'm going to want it. And if I did get it, I'm going to wind up having it for a couple of weeks and then being on reverb, unfortunately, to go out the door. It's like I feel actually like I'm cheating.
Right.
It's a psychological block for me. So if I play like PRS, which PRS is an amazing brand, but I feel like I'm cheating on Gibson. Like it's somewhere in my head, I'm like, you can't play Guns N' Roses with a PRS. What are you thinking, man? Like you can't do that. Like Don't rewrite history.
Right. Do you feel like it's the scale length that speaks to you more than anything?
I believe so. Yeah. As I went on, that's why I stuck with the Gibson ranks. Is I went to the ES, an ES, which is one of my favorite guitars of all time, because they're burst killers. But the only problem is when I play live, the feedback I get with it doesn't just work for me. And also, to be honest with you, it's a little bit big. So for some reason, I have a problem with that, like playing it with my armrest on it. So yeah, but again, it's the best tone of all time, in my opinion. Comes from Gibson ES, not a Les Paul.
Okay. Like specifically like a 335 or?
Yes, that's the one. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. I mean, I bought one. Well, it's not a Gibson, but I bought a 335 Josh Williams shape. And I was shocked at how much I loved how that instrument sounded, because I've been a Strat guy my whole life. And even having had a Les Paul Studio back in the day, it's so far removed from my memory as far as a fingerprint on my life that I didn't remember what that felt like. And I've had PRSs, and I love that company. And being from Maryland, I'm a huge fan. But like every one that I've bought, I just can't fall in love with it. There's something about, I like the Silver Sky.
So do I.
I will say that. I played that, and I A/B'd it against my custom shop Strat, which was like my 40-year-old gift to myself, my like midlife crisis. Because I always wanted one, it was a bucket list guitar for me to have a custom shop Strat. And man, for the money, dude, they're like 2,700 right now, but they play like they're a $5,000, $7,000 Strat. Like they really do play well. And those pickups, I mean, I was talking to my friend earlier today about this, that how people buy guitars because they want to sound like their hero.
Of course. Yeah, that's what we're talking.
That's what we're talking about. Yeah. Well, I think this guitar does it easier. There's something about the way they voice those pickups that you can get that JM sound pretty quickly. If you know what you're doing in terms of how you're attacking the string and everything, you can sound like John pretty quick. And I think it has a lot to do with, I mean, now granted, you got to know John's kind of neurotic, neuroses in terms of how he like approaches playing the instrument and phrasing and stuff. But those pickups will help you do it a lot easier. That's my point.
Yeah, that's actually the only Strat that I ever connected with. I remember once again, I was in Nashville, and I was with a couple of friends of mine. Dusty Waring brought me over to the PRS showroom, which is in a sound rehearsal studio. And
Oh, cool.
yeah, and then Emil, he works there, and he's probably one of the best guitar players of all time. The guy is a genius.
Wow.
And he was like, dude, I know you don't relate with this, you don't relate with that. Try this. Just give it a shot. Like, see what happens. I picked it up. I was like, ooh, this is like, I immediately connected with it. And I felt that, like you said, there was something about the pickups that just had that shimmer.
Mhm.
And it really does everything well. Like you could really put gain onto it and it still have a little bit of push. It wasn't too twangy. It kind of hit more like a Telecaster tone, but then you could get as shiny and shimmery as, a typical Stratocaster.
Yeah. There's a clarity
There is.
with it, like in terms of like, no matter if you've got a bunch of gain or even if you just like are pushing it with a tube screamer, there's a clarity that happens with that instrument with all PRS, I would say. I mean, they do a really good job of like an equal playing field sonically across the board, from the low end to the mid to the high end. I mean, I feel like they balance those guitars sonically so well.
Yeah, they're very consistent, and that's why I say to everyone is, being a Gibson collector versus a PRS collector is I only need one PRS because they're very consistent. You could guarantee that one's going to sound just as good as that one. The only difference is as pretty as the top as the other one.
Mhm.
That's to me has been the only difference based on their lower tier, which still to me is a quality of high tier,
Mhm.
until their custom shops, private stock. It's just like everything they do sounds the same. And to me, that's not an insult to PRS. It's a compliment, but it doesn't bring people back or collectors. That's why there's not really many collectors of PRS guitars versus like Fender, Gretsch and Gibson, because the cult following just alone is all about the inconsistencies
Right.
on how it was made.
Isn't that funny? That's kind of messed up when you think about it. Like you're getting like crucified for being too consistent, Paul. That's a bummer.
I know. That's
Dude,
a good problem to have.
That guy, I just played an award show. There was like a Maryland Music Awards show, and I just played it, and Paul Reed Smith's band played a few bands after mine. And he is just, first of all, he's so fun to talk to. But like when I went out front to watch his band, that dude is so underrated as like he can play, man. Like people don't really know from like the little noodle stuff that he does when you see clips of him. But to see him, his band played 2 songs, maybe. He's a badass player, dude. Like the way that he commands an amp, like he didn't have any pedals. He had a PRS amp on stage, and then he had his Paul's guitar. And the way that he was controlling the tone, using the volume, like doing what like mature guitar players do that I don't do, that I should do more often. I was like, wow, he's getting a lot of great sounds out of one instrument and an amp.
Right. Yeah. And I feel like he's the Tim Cook of the guitar industry. Like he's the last breed of an innovator that really could play the instrument and understands the instrument. Based on the stories I heard, I don't know if it's a lore or it's made up, but I believe it's not, based upon what I've seen with Paul, is he really takes apart everything and he gets to the bottom of it. He like reverse engineers, pickups from Gibson, vintage PAFs, and same thing goes for guitars. Is he doesn't just sit there and go, oh, I want that color, that's cool, and I want that wood because it's cheap. I don't believe that's the case. I believe he takes everything apart, and it's every instrument that he produces or he sells, I believe he would play. He would be happy to play.
I totally agree. I think that's 100% spot on, because he's not the kind of guy that'll let you roll out of the store with a guitar headed to a gig knowing that it may work for you. He's like, no, it'll work for you. Like if you sit down and you play it in the store and you connect with it right then, it's going to sound great. And it's going to come off the wall, sounding good, no matter if it just came that day. That's the other thing, dude. When I had that Yamaha shipped, I was shocked. It came in tune. When I pulled it out of the box, it was in tune.
Yeah,
And
that's a
I
great
was like,
guitar.
what the hell, dude? I think it has a it might be like a carbon fiber, like reinforced truss rod too. So it's like, it's
Flexible.
it's super sturdy. Because they built it for people that are like Chris Buck, who's traveling all over the place in different climates and whatnot,
I
playing
love
with.
his playing, man.
Oh, dude, he's a bad man.
So good, man.
He's a bad man. But anyway, let me talk to you a little bit more about Gibson, because I've had I had the Les Paul, sold that when I was younger. I probably sold that when I was maybe 16 or so. Um, and then I ended up getting, I think that's when I bought my Strat. But since then, I had the Derek Trucks SG,
Oh, that's
which,
wild.
which I bought the Epiphone SG first, because that's when I was learning how to play an open E. And I was like, let me see if I like this. Like, because those guitars, I always was like, there's a lot of great fret access, obviously, for slide.
Oh yeah.
But I'm like, I don't really love the way they look. And then when I got that guitar and I played it, I'm like, okay, I think I get it. Like, it almost felt Stratty to me in a way, like that body. Like, have you messed with SGs a lot in your time?
Yeah, I actually had a couple of vintage SGs because of how much I love it. You know, like you said, the SG has its own place. It's a tool for a certain job, but it could do pretty much everything well. It's just that for me, having that much access to the lower frets is like, whoa, what is this? Is this right? Am I
Right.
like committing blasphemy here by touching these frets?
Right. I know. That's not where the money's made, right? But if you're playing
No.
slide and you're not like fretting up there, it can be great, to
Yeah.
get all the way up. And I always felt like when I got the Derek Trucks model and I sold the Epiphone, the thing that I thought was great about that guitar is it was very balanced. Like, it didn't neck dive or anything like that. When I had it on my shoulder, it stayed right where I wanted it to stay, which I felt was pretty opposite of what I'd heard of SGs in the
Yeah, mine
past.
goes right
Yeah.
down.
Yeah. But it felt very comfortable. The pickups sounded great. I don't remember what pickups were in that guitar. But when you're talking about real fret access, I mean, do you own a Flying V?
Yeah, I used to have a few Flying V's during like certain collector set, but I'm not a fan of the Flying
Really?
V's. I love the Explorers. It's like Star Wars, a Star Trek in the Gibson world. Like I
Right.
can't love both. I have to love one or the other.
What is it about the Flying V? It's just uncomfortable or ergonomically, or?
Yeah, I like because I'm not playing out a lot, so I'm playing in my home, and I need something when I'm sitting down that I could grip and I could kind of get comfortable with. It's a good guitar if you're on the couch and you just like want to doodle, but it's not a good guitar if you're like trying to get down and learning a song and playing it sitting down. Because I don't want to stand up all the time. I'm old now, my back hurts.
Right. Yeah. Dude, I always wondered why people like, was it Albert King?
Mhm.
Mainly was, yeah, I always wondered like why did he choose that instrument? Out of all the stuff that was available at that time, I'm always curious. Like, have you ever heard stories about that?
I heard a few stories, and Gibson tells a lot of stories when you go to the vault.
Mhm.
But with Albert King, what my belief is, nobody knows it. Probably Joe Bonamassa or Mark Agnesi would know the real answers to that. But with that time and that era, it was something to be different. There was they weren't treated like other musicians. That's number one. So what everybody else had, they couldn't get, and he just got his hands on whatever he could get. And I believe, and you know what? He rocked the shit out of that thing, man.
Yeah, dude. And those were like, was that a Carina with like PAFs in it and everything?
That's the real deal.
Yeah.
That's one of the limited, was it 35 or 85? I forget. I switched them two around, but no matter what, that was the real deal.
Man. Yeah, dude, I would not turn it down if somebody was like, "Here, try this," because I've always been curious, and probably for me, before I knew about Albert King, I knew about Lenny Kravitz playing
Oh
one. You know what I
yeah.
mean? And like hearing him play it, I was like, "That thing is wicked looking." I mean, I don't know if I could pull it off. I don't have leather pants, but like that thing looks rad. I mean, like on him, it worked.
Oh yeah.
That
Everything works on
headstock,
it, dude.
the headstock on that thing too is like.
It's just weird.
It's super weird, but it's also super classic. Like when I see that now, I'm like, yeah, that's what it should look like. You know what I mean?
All the metal players, that's what they used to play. You know what I
Mhm.
mean? Well, it all started from Metallica, but the reality is it started from a blues guy, which is kind of awesome because that's the most heavy metal you can get.
Yeah.
Is Where It Begun,
Yeah, that's true, man. All right, so I wanted to talk. I know you have some guitars, and I asked you to like bring some of your favorites because,
Mhm.
and you know, I love. Did you bring a Poppy Burst looking guitar?
Oh no,
Damn it!
I didn't bring a
Damn
poppy
you!
bird, but there's
Um,
one right behind me, so I could grab it.
yeah. Well, show me the ones that you picked out and tell me the story behind these guitars because all the pictures you post are always so cool.
Oh, thanks, man. I really appreciate it. It
Yeah,
takes a lot of work
yeah,
to get those photos,
yeah.
but
The flames always show up so awesome on your pictures. So
well, that's the key is that less lighting brings out the flame, but all the tops that I have, they're true and honest. Like I always call them honest photos because if you came over to my home, you would see that the flame tops look exactly as they do in the photos. There's no trick photography. I'm not that good.
so what's this one? When did you get it? What's the story?
So this one is Nicky, I call it. So originally, when I came back into playing guitar in 2015, I had a long period of time. I paused for a minute. I seen this guitar. Sorry, no, I seen the Nicky, the Collector's Choice Nicky with a C,
Okay.
and I loved it. I wanted it. Couldn't find it anywhere. There was no reverb, I believe, that at least that I was aware of reverb at the time. So I looked everywhere, called guitar stores. They didn't have it. Suddenly, Sweetwater had this guitar, and I felt it looked very close to the Nicky. Not only did this guitar look close to Nicky, which I didn't know at the time, is Tom Murphy painted it and aged the guitar.
Oh,
This thing it weighs 710, 7.10.
really?
It's the perfect weight guitar, and this started me on the journey of Murphy Lab. And there wasn't a Murphy Lab back then, but being a fan of Tom Murphy's guitars and his workmanship, because not only do they sound great, but for some reason with the flame tops that he has, they really pop like a PRS guitar. They don't pop. You know how a lot of Gibsons are too desired, most of them. And not that they're not great for big flame tops, but they're far and in between. And when you do see a great flame top, you're like, oh man, what am I going to pay for that thing? Because for a fact someone's hands touched it. That was very special over there. That it's going to go up $10,000 for the same price piece of wood.
It's crazy.
It is. It's absurd. But I have to say that whatever Tom personally touches, it's magic. It's not like we were talking about PRS and Paul. There's something about when certain people put their love into an instrument that love gets produced from someone else. And it's a good vibe. It's a good energy, and it just passes through. And with this guitar, as soon as I played it, I fell in love, and I didn't like aged guitars at all. I didn't actually know it was aged when I purchased it from Sweetwater because their photos, everything looks washed out. But when I got it, I was like, ooh. And I just felt like right from that point forward is when I got my bug and started purchasing nonstop Murphy Lab. Tom Murphy guitars.
Right. So is the neck on the back of that? It's all worn down. Like they sand the neck on that and stuff.
No, this is tasteful.
Okay.
See, it's very tasteful.
Oh.
Back then, they didn't really go wild. Tom was doing everything with a razor blade, so by hand.
Holy crap!
No freezer at that point, so it was a lot more work. And for me, like if you think about it, these ones should have been $50,000 like they are now because it's done by a razor blade for somebody. Back then, I think you got these for the custom shop price, which is like $5,600 or something.
Oh my god, yeah, dude.
Yeah, there's a lot of bang for the buck.
Yeah.
And it's a true historic, which for me, as Gibson lores come down to is there's a good wood era in the 90s, which people will argue that's no such thing. But to whoever said it, I believe it. Then this era guitar is the true historics, which I felt is an equal to the 90s guitars, the late 90s guitars. From that point now, everything is great that Gibson puts out. Like, I'm not just saying that. It's the truth. Like, if you invest, $10,000 into an instrument, you're getting a $10,000 instrument. If people want to believe it or not, that's on to them, and they can invest their money any way they would like to. But all I always tell people is if they bark at it or on the page, people will say, oh, I would take that guitar. I'll age it myself. I get that. Go for it. That's on to you. But when something comes already aged and something comes where the woods are picked out by an individual, that's somebody who is a tone chaser,
Mm-hmm.
They understand what that wood's going to produce, especially if you get a lightweight mahogany like this from behind. You got like a chambered guitar, but it's a solid body. So you got that nice tone, very light, very airy. It's Led Zeppelin all the way.
Yeah.
But you also get the quality instrument and the quality woods that are put into, a line like this.
Right. Is that an ebony board?
Oh no, I don't play ebony. It's too snappy
Okay.
for me.
Okay.
Yeah,
It's just rosewood.
yeah. This is rosewood. I wish it was Brazilian rosewood,
Right.
but of
Man.
course, it looks like it though. That's
It's
what I
pretty
love.
dark. Yeah.
I always love a dark board. For some reason, when I get a light board, it turns me off. It's just not my thing. That's meant for like Fenders and for other brands that actually aesthetic looks, good with that light board.
Right.
Gibson's, nah, you can't do that.
Now, have you modded that at all? Did you put any different pickups in it, or is it the same thing?
Yeah, I mod everything. I'm not saying that Gibson stuff isn't good enough, but there's a certain flavor that I like, which we spoke about before with Slash's tone. Seymour Duncan on Nickel Pro 2s are what I put in the majority of my guitars. If it's a great pickup, I leave it alone. Don't touch it. Leave it alone. Why even do anything with the guitar? Because it's a great guitar. Sometimes you can make it worse.
Right.
Just keep it great. Don't mess with it. And I have done that before. I made a great guitar into a piece of crap.
Right.
So, that's to each his own. But I try not to do that. But if there is guitars and pickups that are changed, it's going to be these Seymour Duncan and Nickel Pro 2s in every single guitar I own.
Okay. Well, that's respectable. If you like it, stick with it, man.
It works. I tried other ones, but it just never felt the same.
Yeah, that's dope. All right, where's the next one? Let's move on to number 2.
Let me get this one put back. The next one's
a really nice finish, man.
Yeah, it's like close to the Poppy.
It is very close, yeah.
This one's going to give you the Poppy first feel, actually. It's not a good guitar, but somebody owned it that was a good player or okay player. So this is Slash's personal guitar that he used and we traded over 2 years ago. That Nico, who plays the YouTube covers, he orchestrated everything because he talks to Slash on a daily basis to trade one of my guitars for one of his guitars, which is like, you're like, what? That's a thing?
Yeah, how did that happen?
It just, Nico.
Yeah.
It happened because of him. One person shared a guitar with Slash. Slash said, I like it, and let's do a trade. So he was like, what would you want to trade? So I was like, oh man, I always wanted the Joe Perry Slash, Joe Perry, because the November Rain guitar. And
that's that?
Well, it's not the one, it's the replica.
The finish, yeah.
Yeah, this is the replica of that. So it's a signature model, but this is the artist proof number 6, which was the one he used live for all prior to Slash's solo tour to Slash, Miles Kennedy, and Conspirators. He used, and there's like blood on this thing from him.
Oh
like
my God.
You could say, Slash, you see those little dings, that's from his bracelets. Is like, this man knows how to age a guitar. Like, look at the back of this thing.
Oh yeah.
That's like, oh man.
You can see it's all scratched up in certain spots. Yeah.
He just abuses
belt rash.
it.
Yeah.
Oh man. But this is a great guitar and a light one as well, compared to his other guitars that he, has based on we traded. This is probably one of the most resonant, and I feel it's something that speaks volumes towards his tone. And I also pop things open to see what tricks he has underneath the hood, and he has none.
So it was all stock.
It's all stock except for the pickups. This Nickel Pro 2s, he uses those, and that's in all his guitars, every single one of them.
That's so cool, man. All right, so I have to ask you now, when you do this trade with Slash, this is somebody that you grew up idolizing. How do you play it cool? And like, did you give up something that you regret giving up, or are you like, I don't even care if it was something that I loved, I would have done this regardless?
Yeah, it could have been any guitar, probably even Nicky at that time, because I would never expect it to happen. It's like, it's not even a bucket list item. How do you say to have that as a bucket list item? It's like an impossible thing. Like, it's not something you would ever expect in your lifetime to happen. But, thanks to people like Nico and, Slash himself for being such a kind soul. And he just wants to, he's just like us. He wants to play guitars, and he wants to play as many as possible. And he likes to trade guitars because he doesn't feel like he's any different than you and I. Like,
Right.
that's exactly how he is. If he was on the show right now, he'd be talking to you just as I'm talking to you, but he'd be more interesting because he's Slash, of course.
Well, I mean, I find I can tell from interviews that I've seen him give, he seems like a really down to earth human being first and foremost. So like,
He
it
is.
doesn't surprise me at all. So did he like, since then, I'm sure you guys keep in touch now about guitars and everything. Does he have a guitar that he's told you he would never get rid of?
Yeah, there's a lot. He tells me no, like, all the time.
Okay.
Yeah.
Like, what's an example of something that he was like, I will never ever trade that?
Well, I wouldn't ask him for this, but just so it's out there,
Mhm.
is, Chris Derrick, which is the guitar he recorded since Appetite for Destruction all the way to the newer records. I don't believe he used it on Orgy of the Damned, the new blues record, but he's used it on every single record. It's Slash's tone. Like, that is who he is, like the Jimmy Page #1 and 2.
Mhm.
That's going to be one of those guitars that might be the highest value guitar ever sold if it ever goes to auction at some point.
That's nuts, dude. And then, so what is the finish? What kind of a burst is that considered?
It's a kindred burst, they call it, but pretty much it's a faded tobacco.
Yeah,
That's what they were back then. They were pretty much you could see a little bit of the red still left over in it.
yeah.
So it's pretty much a faded, cherry burst at that point that got to this level where it's almost down to a poppy burst. The poppy burst keeps the brown, but literally it's like the fade that's over here. You don't really have any color at all.
Yeah, I was gonna say it's very thin around that lower belt. Like it's like
tasteful.
Yeah, it's very nicely done. And by the way, this show also ends up on like Apple Podcasts and Spotify. If you guys want to see these guitars, head over to YouTube so you can see how beautiful these guitars are. That he's showing us. This is so killer. So that's the thing about these kind of bursts. Like, the reason I think I like the poppy so much is because it's not so flashy. It's not, it's like more of the guitar wood kind of shines through. That's kind of like the star of the show, I think. But I was always like, red for me in a burst. Like, I like my Strat has some red in it, but it's not a lot. It's more brown,
Right.
yellow.
It's like a tri-burst. It has kind of in color.
Yeah, totally. And I like that a lot. But there was also a guitar. My buddy and I talk about this all the time. But Stone Gossard from Pearl Jam had like, he calls it a clown burst. I've never heard that before.
That's what I call the cherry burst, clown burst. That he made it up. I thought it was me.
Yeah. I don't know, but like he that guitar I think got smashed at some point or got destroyed. And I don't know if I've never really seen him break a guitar too much, more McCready, but like so the clown burst is more red, like a lot of red in it, from what I understand.
That's like a bright cherry sunburst. We had to go down to the back in the day labels and the way things were. It was really just a cherry sunburst at that point.
Okay.
The fading, because of the dyes that when they were in the windows, they would turn to a different color because it's in the sun.
Yeah.
Which is kind of funny because it's a sunburst that actually does the opposite of burst.
Right.
It takes away it takes away the burst.
It's a little ironic. All right, so we got a little bit of time left. You got one more?
I got one final one.
Okay.
I just gotta take these headsets off so I can grab it.
What usually is, like, when you see a burst, like, what usually is like your favorite colors, like on a burst?
The reason why the Slash trades happen is because I inspire everything he owned. I wanted something like, so I'm gonna stick with. It's either it's gonna be probably a Dirty Lemon.
Oh yeah,
or a tri-burst. The tri-burst or dark burst. I just like that it has the 3 colors in there and they're all deep. And it's just really sexy as hell.
Oh yeah.
And it's because you get a little sneak peek of the wood, and then you get a really good paint job.
Man,
which is wild.
Yeah, this burst, I mean, it looks so beautiful. All right, hit me with this next one.
All right, this one's good. Hold on, let me get the headset off.
Uh-oh. I think we got something major happening right now. He's pulling it out. He's opening the case. Here we go. What is this going to be? Oh, wow.
Let me not drop it. So, oop, so,
Green.
something's playing. How do I turn this off? Sorry.
That's okay. You got. I can't. We can't hear it.
Oh, it's good. Only I could hear it. It's awful.
So that's like an emerald burst. What is that? Is that what that's called, or what's that?
That's actually probably what it originally was. But this is called the Anaconda Burst because Slash loves snakes.
Okay.
And I think it's what at one point I thought it was the ugliest guitar I've ever seen in my life. And then little by little it's grown on me. But this was actually the last trade him and I did 4 weeks ago.
Oh wow.
So it was a recent trade. So we constantly, keep communication going through Nico or just, basic conversation.
Mm-hmm.
And he saw a guitar that I love in my collection that I didn't have for long. It was from actually Chris Tapp. So he was the person I got it from. And immediately I thought in my head, if I get that, Slash is going to love that guitar. I know it. It's freaking so Slashy's got such a vibe. And I had it for a couple of weeks. I did some work to it. I put the pickups in. I changed out the pots, personalized it a little bit more.
Mm-hmm.
And he saw it. I think it was from Nico, sent it to him. He's like, you got to check this out.
Oh,
he's
man.
like, dude, he's like, I want that one.
So Slash is basically just stalking you because you have great taste in guitars. And he's like, if he sees something he likes, he hits you up.
Yeah, he doesn't really come to me.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, he doesn't look for it. I don't believe it's always through, somebody else, maybe one of my posts that I have him on based on a song. But it's not something that he goes out and looks for. Anything he's ever or I've ever worked with him on is things I brought to the table personally, or that Nico has brought to the table, or just in conversation that he was playing my guitar and he would ask a question like, hey, what did you do with this? Like, who did you get the work done by? Historic Makeovers. Because, the guitars that we traded, he loved the first one because it had the Brazilian rosewood.
Mm-hmm.
And he wanted that appointment on the third trade. And then the same thing went for Chris's trade, which I don't believe has had the Brazilian rosewood, but it had the really dark rosewood. And it had this killer like flame, the color. Like that dude, Chris, he knows guitars. He's the Cold Stairs. His band is a really good band as well. So he utilizes those guitars and he makes music with it. And, probably I think he has the best looking collection on, Instagram from guitar collectors, in my opinion.
Man, and those Brazilian ones, those are going for like 20 plus now, right?
I don't know why people would pay that, but
I don't either, man. Like that's the thing is like, I gagged a little bit when I spent close to $4,000 on that 335 because I was like I had to sell. I sold 2 Sirs to get that. And I was like, am I doing the right thing here? Like, because it's sight unseen. Like, when you order now, Josh Williams builds amazing stuff. Like that's like built by 2 people, basically, by hand and carved by hand and everything. But like at the same time, so he probably should be getting more than that than $4,000.
Oh yeah.
Which I think his prices are above, they're north of that now. But like, I was scared because I was like, I better fall in love with this thing. It better play like $1 million,
That's the fear.
And it does, and it really does. But like, yeah, to even spend north of that on a Les Paul, I'm like, oh, I don't know if I want to do that. Like, it's just like scary, and I guess because you got to play them all. I mean, that's the thing I hear. Like we were talking about the inconsistencies. All my friends are like, any Gibson, you gotta play them all to find the one that's good fit.
Yeah, but that speaks volumes. The 2 guitars that they produced that I have played or I have owned in my collection is that the Greenie, which was the 50K Greenie. It's probably better than any burst I've ever played. Not that I'm Joe Bonamassa and I played tons of burst, like real burst, but these guitars, every one that I played sounded the same, but it was really open, airy, and it had that juice behind it, like a Telly on steroids.
Yeah.
Then the Brazilian line came out. The Brazilian line for 20K, I that's steep, man. That's a steep price to pay, but it is a quality instrument. Like if you had to save up and you only wanted one guitar in your collection, I think that one of those would be the guitar that I would purchase. But again, I would purchase probably used on Reverb, because 20K, man, just it doesn't make sense to me at
Mm-mm.
all.
No, I mean that's a hard pill to swallow for me, but it's because there's times when I was thinking about like, oh, what it would be cool to have like an early '60s Strat, and then like 27 grand. I'm like, I could take out a car loan. And my wife was like, the hell you will.
Yeah,
She's like, no, you're not. You're not buying a guitar for $27,000, buddy. Like there's no way you're doing that.
that's how we think. But that's the
Yeah.
insanity that goes through our mind. Hey, maybe if I sell my kidney, like,
Right. Dude, I'm like right now I'm having a hard time trying to sell this 2 Rock because I'm not shipping it. I want to do it locally.
yeah, I remember I
And
saw that.
yeah, and it's if people want me to ship it, and I'm like, God, that's gonna be such a pain in the ass to ship it, but I might have to at some point if there's not any local buyers.
Well, that's the
Um,
issue. Is it's heavy, number one, and it's going to cost a fortune to ship. You have
mhm.
the tubes in there. There's a more risk they're taking on shipping that to them versus it being a local buyer who's guaranteed to get exactly what you handed over to them.
Totally, 100%. That's my thought too. I mean, it's worth it to like wait and find the right person who wants it. Like even with if I have to drive an hour or 2 hours to like meet somebody somewhere to give it to them, I would do it. But so I know you got a Magnetone shirt on. I know Slash has shifted gears, and everybody was shocked when he switched over to Magnetone from Marshall and everything. But what's your vibe? Like, are you playing? Like, I see some Marshalls back there.
Mm-hmm.
But like, what are you playing through regularly with these instruments? Because I'm sure it's glorious.
I'm playing actually. So I have Slash's new amp, the SL100, but
Mm-hmm.
it's a 100-watt amp. It's extremely powerful, and it's not something you just practice at home with. It's a good, like, let's turn it up one day and get the adrenaline going, and hopefully you don't lose your hearing kind of amp. But the Super 15, like, I remember when Slash told me when we were at the Guns N' Roses show, and this is the first time I met him in person, he was like, I'm like, did you do something to your sound? Are you using like a different like overdrive or something? Because it sounds like a Marshall, but it kind of got more of a classic tone to it. It's brighter. It's got a little more, it just sounds like a vintage sound. It doesn't have too much gain. You hear the guitar. It's got that roar to it, especially if you have a really good woody sounding guitar. It sounds perfect, in my opinion. So when I asked that question, he's like, yeah, I am. He's like, good ear. He's like, I'm playing Magnetones now. He's like, this, keep it on the wraps
DL.
for the time
Yeah.
being. Yeah. So I'm like, all right, cool. And I'm like, can I ask you what you bought? He's like, yeah, I got the M80, which is the amp. That's the one he replicated for his sound.
Mm-hmm.
And I have the Super 15. Super 15 he used on his new album, and the M80 he used on his new album. The M80, if I was a kid, that would have been the perfect sound for me.
Yeah.
But for some reason, I feel the Magnetone Super 15, like, you could get chugs on that thing, but you could get the nicest, cleanest distortion sounds. And you could really get anyone's tone from it, because number one, it's in the hands. But if you put a Klon, or for me, I use Mythos pedals, the Wildwood one, it's like awesome. It's just so open and vibey. And for me to switch over from Marshall, and the one thing I've always had beef with Marshall is, even as a kid, is it's just fizzy. If you don't really lock it in on the perfect sound to really blare it up for a 50-watt or 100-watt, you're not really getting the Marshall sound. It's kind of like they're like the Gibson of amps, very inconsistent. And that's what made them so, that lore, and it built that cult following, not besides for the artists who were using it, but the tone inconsistencies, like when they hand wired all their amps.
Yeah, I mean the Magnetone stuff, dude, that's like high fidelity. It feels like high fidelity amplifiers to me because
Yeah.
they're very punchy. They have a beautiful, I feel like, roundness to the note. Even in the upper register, I don't feel like they get super ice picky at all. Like,
No.
and
And
if
they
it
don't get
is,
muddy.
no, yeah, and there's like so much clarity with those things. But like when I had the I had one on loan. I can't remember which one it was. It wasn't the Twilighter. It was the smaller one, the Varsity amp. And I did a demo on that, and I was like, "Holy shit, this thing is loud!" Like,
Yeah,
it was
they're powerful.
loud ass 15 watts. Like,
Yeah,
this
that's
would
what
have,
this is.
yeah, no
I'm like,
problem.
whoa, it's
Yeah,
powerful, man.
no
Like,
problem getting over top of a drummer at all in a
no,
bar.
it's insane, because you know what it is? It's the right transformers. that they
Mhm.
use. The amps get to breathe. If an amp gets to breathe and you have the right circuitry in it, capacitors and the list goes on,
Mhm.
you'll get a cleaner signal and a more powerful signal. So they're not cheaping out. Like when people are like, I'm not spending $4,000 on an amp. I'm in agreement with you. If it's outside of something you want to spend, there's no value in it. But just understand, just because you won't spend that, don't take away from the design, the engineering that went into this thing. Like, and
Right.
Magnatone is the only brand that came out. And again, this is because I'm a Slash fan, and I'm saying this because there's a lot of brands. But for me, that's come out and really like changed the game in my eyes. I was like, wow, they've been around for a long time. But when they got introduced back to me, I was like, dude, I got to start buying different amps. I got the, Amplified Nation right next to me. I'm like, awesome. It's like, and I'm just going down that amp train. Like the
Yeah.
guitars for me and collecting the guitars are becoming secondary because I'm having so much enjoyment on
With the
playing
amp.
amps. Yeah. It's like
Which which
awesome.
of which of Taylor's amps do you have?
This one's the Overdrive Reverb. I just got it
Oh,
from
yeah.
Watchtower Guitars. Yeah, it's awesome, this thing. But Mark Agnesi was like, you're gonna get an amp from him. Get this one. This is the one that you would like based on your musical influences. And honestly, it's really wild. And I like mixing amps together. Like I learned it from Joe Bonamassa. It's like he'll take the Silver Jubilee and then put the Dumble S sound to it, but he develops his own sound because you can't get both in one amp. You have to have two amps in order to get that sound that a guy like him's looking for, or most people are looking for, because it's layering. And once I've been doing that, it's like, wow, I really feel it. And you could just hit like an open E or just chug on an E, and you like feel like you own the world at that point. And that's what these amps do, man. They honestly, these are the things that are inspiring me at this day and age. Going down the digital train and full circling it back to analog. I feel like that's where I want to be. That's my home. And this is something that I want to express to the world and let people know about is the higher end amplifiers. Like I'm stating, is invest your money smart due to trade ups, just like Joe Bonamassa did, and a lot of big collectors and investors. Is you start with the guitar you could afford, then you trade up. And
Mhm.
I think Trogley does this. He used to do a show where he would trade up from like a $5 item to like a $3,000 guitar. Is you could do it. It just takes patience. But
Mm.
if you buy that instrument that seems out of reach, eventually it will be within reach. And then you have a system that's made. And for you to keep on going down and getting, whatever guitars you want. And you can replicate that, as money keeps on flowing in, or if you sell other items for a higher value, you'll be able to purchase, more guitars and become a collector. It's not about how much money you have, it's how you invest it. Like I have no clue how to invest money. So I know about guitars and I know what guitars are going to hold value, and that's going to build the future, for, when I retire, I know where it's going to bring in. I have an idea.
Right. Do you feel like the Murphy Lab stuff like appreciates like over time pretty easily, or have you noticed any trends with it? Some that don't, or like what's the stuff that you've seen?
Well, they oversaturated the market at this point.
Mhm.
So when it was in 2020, when the Murphy Labs first came out, and they would have kept it like a limited kind of item or a more boutique-esque part of their line,
Mhm.
versus like now a Murphy Lab, kind of replaced a VOS guitar. Now you can't just find a VOS. You can find like 15, Murphy Labs, ultra light versus one VOS, which is where it all started. Like this is a VOS finish.
Mhm.
So for it to hold value, I don't know. It does come down to two things with collectors. With the newer style guitars, is it's about the top, and it's about how the aging was done. If somebody feels that you could price it at $25,000 and the guitar is like 4,000, it's if they feel that's something they want, they'll spend anything in order to get that. So there is value to anything you purchase, and Murphy Labs will have its value, but Murphy Labs really shine on the signature model releases like Kirk Hammett,
Right.
Adam Jones. They really this Slash event, which is being done this Sunday, and his signature model. Like that's where Murphy Lab the guitars are going to hold that value and grow. But the problem is they're so unreachable for the real fans. It's kind of like sports. It's like the real fan should be in the first row, but you're making it so expensive to get to that first row that they're sitting all the way in the back while the person in the front row is asking, when's this football game going to be over? It's baseball. Like, what do you mean?
Yeah.
Like, it's baseball.
yeah, I hear you, man. Yeah, that's tough. It's really tough because like the fans and the players that want these instruments in their hands to make music. There are the blues lawyers who are collecting them and they're just sitting in a closet. They're like classic closets. So closet classics. But it's I don't know, man. I think we look at these things as art and tools.
Mm-hmm.
And I always, with all the pictures you post, sometimes I'm just like, stop it. I'm I want one so bad. And at some point, dude, I'm gonna be able to find. I really want to find that kind of lemon poppy burst kind of thing with a good top on it because I need a Les Paul in my collection at some point.
Oh yeah.
And I love the 335 and I love what that's, and I swapped those pickups out too. They came with, and these, don't get me wrong, the pickups that it came with were chef's kiss. They were really good, like PAF style pickups. And they were from Tone Specific. They're called Bloombuckers.
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah.
They're great.
They are
really good. But my buddy James works, he has that company Rewind.
Oh, come on. Can't compare.
Dude, no.
Nobody compares. They're like you bow down company. Seriously.
So I got a set of his PAF pickups and put them in there, and there was a noticeable difference. They were better.
Did you get the where he was using the vintage wire versus the new?
So I got his, because I'm a nerd, I got his Trey Anastasio. He calls them TAFs.
That's awesome.
And because they're the ones that he built for Trey and that are in Trey's Languedoc guitars. And he was like, are you sure you want that? I mean, I think we could probably voice something different for, your 335. And I was like, no, I think I like how they sound. Like, let me try them kind of thing. And I really like them. And at some point I might get his regular, like awesome, classic PAF pickups and try it out there.
Yeah. Try it on the Les Paul. That's try that out.
Okay.
Because the guitar you put him in, I think with Trey's sound, it's perfect. And Trey is 100% a tone snob.
Yes.
Like that man is so overqualified for what he's doing. Like he knows it all. He does all the setups. He does all his configuration. And that man can make the guitar, like you were stating before with PRS, he could have no gain on and be able to manipulate the instrument.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, it's true. And his tech, Justin, was telling me like they switched to 50s wiring at some point, and like Trey was like bow down to, he was just like, I had no clue like that this could change the sound of this instrument this much in terms of rolling off and everything, but so that stuff is kind of all part of my journey too, because humbuckers have not been my thing. Like single coils have been my thing my whole life.
Which ones?
Well, so the ones that I had in my original Strat that I bought when I was in college or high school, I can't remember. Those were Texas Specials, noisy as hell, but punchy and had that Stevie kind of thing.
Oh yeah.
But I have since, that Strat is now my Open C Strat, and James built me a set of pickups that are like voiced for low tuning, like Open C, and they sound dope. They're so like, just like I use that adjective all the time, but they're so crystal clear, and like every little nuance of every harmonic of every note, the bloom of every note when I'm playing slide is just three-dimensional.
Oh yeah.
So he's amazing. But in my custom shop, those are specifically Wildwood. I bought them from Wildwood.
Oh, those are good.
Yeah, the Wildwood 10.
Ooh.
Yeah, those pickups are great. It's got the classic Strat, like that late 50s, early 60s kind of Strat sound to it.
Yeah, Wildwood is like the one place when anybody asks me where should I buy my first Les Paul, Wildwood. If you want to have the best, quality instrument, the best tops, and also a custom PAF that sounds really, really good, you go to Wildwood. Like everything about that store is high quality. It's the best customer experience you'll ever have. And you get the best instruments. Usually it's either or. And based on my experience of purchasing guitars, guitar stores are like car salesmen a lot of time. It's like, please just sell me the damn instrument. Like, why do I have to beg you to call me back to sell me an instrument? Like, what's wrong with you, dude? It's like 20 phone calls in. It's like, who are you?
I always think of that. My friends and I always joke about the whole thing when you, I mean, I haven't walked into a Guitar Center in a long time, but like if I did walk in there and somebody came up to me, it's that whole thing from like Parks and Rec where like, I know more than you.
Yeah,
I don't need to talk to you about this stuff. I know what I want and I know what I'm looking for.
give me that.
Yeah, yeah. But you're right, dude. Like when I bought that Strat, I mean, they played a few for me. They're like, what are you looking for? Do you care about the color? And I was like, I'm a little bit, on the fence about being vain about the color. I mean, I'm kind of really just wanted a really cool Sunburst Strat.
Of
Like it looked
course,
old.
that's vintage.
Yeah. And and the guy that I talked to was like, all right, I think I got 3 that might work for you. And he was like, let me play a few and I'll listen to like what you were telling me. And he's like, I got the perfect one. This is the one that you're going to want. And there was another one, Todd, that was like a green sparkle. That
I
was,
love that.
it was cool, dude. It was like a Sherwood green. It wasn't like so much like that, but it was more like that deep, dark forest
Yeah,
Sherwood green.
that's what I'm getting into right now, actually.
Yeah, that's cool. But like when they do that metal flake thing, that's kind
So
of
dope.
neat.
I love that, man. That because that's 80s. That's like,
Yeah.
what we used to look to and be like, whoa,
Yeah.
sparkly guitar.
Yeah. And when I talked to him about that, I'm like, that one was cool too. He's like, that one sounds dead compared to this. He's like, that's a great guitar, but that sounds dead compared to this one. And I was like, okay, I believe you. Let's
That's
do it.
what they do to me all the time. Like,
Yeah.
I'll go through like a bunch of nice tops that I like over there. And then, I deal with Greg majority of the time. And he's like, dude, I played the 3 of them. This is the one. It just sounds perfect. And I
Yeah.
get it. I never once have said, I need to return this. This is absolute crap.
Right.
And that happens a lot. Like, I found a couple of pieces of dead wood and like it was just, it frustrates you at that point because you don't have anybody to talk to. And you purchase it from Sweetwater. It's an amazing experience. And everybody there is so attentive. But the only thing they can't do for you is play the guitar. So
Right.
it's like, hey, what do you think of this guitar? It looks cool.
Right.
Anything else to say about it?
Right.
It's expensive. Yeah.
Oh my God. So how many guitars have you gotten through Wildwood, do you think?
Oh, that's a good question. So from the pandemic special,
Mm-hmm.
I started collecting a lot because I had nothing else to do.
Mm-hmm.
And I started with Wildwood because I met him online through a friend named James, which I called JJ. And it was the best thing a person's ever done for me because being introduced to someone personally who works at Wildwood has been, a game changer for me. And it's been an experience that I always want it to replicate that never does.
Mm-hmm.
But from that time when I purchased my first one, which was a Murphy Lab, it's the first ultra heavy Murphy Lab from the original 2020 line. I think from that purchase, I purchased maybe about like 17 guitars or maybe more.
Dang,
Every
dude.
single birthday I have, I tell my wife, like right now, because my birthday is July 19th, we're looking at guitars at Wildwood. And then Greg starts, like I give Greg a few, guitars I want because I'm looking for like a colorful, like PAF guitar because I want something that's like, that's different from the rest of the collection, but still keeping the Les Paul. But I really want something sparkly or like old, Ford Colors kind of
Right.
guitar, which is so rad. And they do that with my wife. They work with her and they build the whole experience so I don't even know what's going on.
Yeah.
And for me, it's like that's an extra step. They could just be like, Jacqueline, get this guitar. He'll love it. What's she gonna know? She's gonna be like, fine, like I'll get it because Todd likes it and you said he likes it. But no, they'll tell them like he was weighing towards this one the most, or he said this, or this is a guitar that Slash would like, so Todd will love it.
Yeah.
Like they do that all the time. Like they really think like how
Yeah.
I think, and it's just why wouldn't you want to purchase if I had great tops every single day and I had the money to invest, I would purchase from them every day and I would stop purchasing from every store. Gibson Garage, we don't want to count them because that's more of like a flagship kind of like experience versus it being a guitar store, because guitar stores to me are mom and pop shops.
Yeah.
Those are the best ones. Those are the ones you want to support. And those are the ones that, kind of teach the big companies how to act. They keep them in check. Like Wildwood sells more guitars than the Gibson Garage does. Like that's a fact. Like like they sell so many, even probably more than Sweetwater. We're speaking in the higher tier lines like PRS, Fender, and Gibson. Like they definitely sell more than them. Like it's unbelievable how many guitars they get in, and their tech is unbelievable. His name is OG. We call him Old Greg, and he's the man. You know, then you have Greg like playing the guitar, like rocking the guitar. Right. It's just like everything about them is like the lore. I remember I built all my photos, every photo that I've ever taken, I stole from Wildwood. Like I always try to replicate it, and I can't even come close, and it pisses me off. Yeah. But sometimes you can't. You listen. In order to touch greatness, you got to go through the trials. So I'm working on it. But this whole amp configuration and the way I laid out my room and the colors is all because of the Wildwood videos. Like,
oh, that's cool.
That's like the biggest inspiration, you know, visually for me, because they make the guitar, like you state, they made it art, and they made it sexy, and they made it something that, like, when you see it over and over and over again, you're like, God, I hate you, Wildwood. I need to get that guitar.
Know, yeah. Well, that's the thing. It seems like they treat everybody like family. Like
they do,
you know, and that goes a long way when you're investing that much money on an instrument. It makes you feel so much more comfortable doing it, you know.
It does.
Yeah, that's awesome, dude. Well, we're running out of time, Todd. Let's do the lightning round get down. I have a special one for you here that's a little bit Gibson inspired. So we're gonna like stay in that lane a little bit. We're gonna float at a BPM of 112 per usual. And I gotta do this because I might change this next season. I'm not sure yet, but the first question is always the same: Lennon or McCartney?
Lennon.
Firebird or Explorer?
Explorer.
Junior or Les Paul Special?
Junior.
335 or 345?
335.
Flying V or Melody Maker?
Flying V.
Les Paul or SG?
SG, yeah, Les Paul.
And I don't know your experience with this, but Hummingbird or J45?
Oh, I would go for the Hummingbird, hands down.
Tell me why. I'm curious.
It's just so much more boomier. It's more expressive, I feel. They're both similar into the tone categories, but it's just something that I like tone-wise, like when I listen to artists, you know, that I grew up with.
Okay, fair enough. Tobacco Burst, or let's call it Clown Burst, but Cherry Burst.
Tobacco.
All right. Humbuckers or P90s?
Humbuckers.
And then here's the last one, dude. If you could take one album, doesn't have to be your favorite album of all time, but if you could take one record and erase it from your memory so you could go back and experience it for the first time again, what album would that be?
It definitely would be Appetite for Destruction.
All right. I knew it. All right. So tell me, we know the lore of why you fell in love with guitar and everything, but why that record?
It's number one. It was the first thing I've ever seen on MTV or television musically before. You know, it was like Bon Jovi and Guns N' Roses. But I catered more towards the darker side of music. You know, I catered towards more of like the rebellion aspect of music. And I felt like Guns N' Roses just took that smiley faced era and turned it into a badass era that led into the Nirvanas. And the reason being is because of their tone and the way they lived. Like, they lived the music. They weren't just hired by an industry to, you know, pretend to be a certain way, like NSYNC or the other, you know, smile bands that were out there. They basically built a sound for generations that still people talk about. Like, Appetite for Destruction has not just touched, you know, my life. It's touched, you know, millions of people's lives. Like, I hear all over YouTube and all over, you know, just conversations I have on the streets. People will always say like that is like the all-time best record from begin to end.
There's something about like that was like the sea change starting too, I guess. But you know, it's funny because I had friends who were like super into Motley Crue, and I'm like, I don't get it. I don't know why you like that band. Like, it's not my jam, but like I can respect the musicianship of, you know, what those guys were doing, like especially Tommy Lee's drumming.
Oh yeah.
Or like, you know, even Alex Van Halen. I was never a huge Van Halen dude, but like again, I was like off the cusp. So like Van Halen, then Guns N' Roses, and then Pearl Jam and Nirvana and Alice in Chains and Soundgarden. Were you into that stuff too? Like, did you get into like the darker, like Alice in Chains, Soundgarden, and all that stuff?
Who couldn't? Come on, man. You know, I went through my childhood where things were, you know, sad. So I just wanted to go back into the, you know, downward spiral. Like that was the perfect generation for the music that I was experiencing in life, which I love.
Yeah. I mean, dude, I listen to Ministry. I listen to, Nine Inch Nails, all that stuff too. Like outside of that, I mean, that stuff was a little bit hard to kind of swallow comparative to the melodic nature of Pearl Jam for me. But I was like, I was curious about
Mhm.
it. And like Pantera, like I was curious about that when I heard Cemetery Gates. I was like,
That's what made me curious as well. That song.
that song was like, and dude, there was this. I'll keep this really short, but there was this local band when I was a high school student. They were a couple years older than us, and they played at this courtyard that was at the high school, like a different high school. My bandmate went to this different high school that was like 5 miles away, and we saw them play that song. And those dudes were like savants, like young kids that were like playing that shit note for note, like note for note, and singing it like note for note. Everything was spot on. And I remember being like, how are these 16, 17-year-old kids doing this? Meanwhile, I'm like,
Yeah.
and then like that at that time, I think I was like, there's more to guitar than what I've been experiencing. And even if it's outside the realm of stuff that I would want to sing or play on stage, there's something going on here.
Yeah, I agree.
And I think the same thing of Guns N' Roses, because I'm like, obviously there's a reason that band has the longevity that it has, and Slash is still the person he is, and the icon he is.
Oh yeah.
So it's like I can see it from the outside, but I never dove into it. It's weird.
It's there's certain people and certain bands, and or like Slash, he is an icon. He's a symbol of rock and roll. Like Prince is a symbol. Jimi Hendrix. Like you could see them in a split second. Just do whoop. Who is that? Jimi Hendrix.
Right. Yeah.
Who's that? David Gilmour. You can tell by the way they stand. Like
Right.
Slash, the hat. People in milliseconds would know who it is because he's got that look. And Guns N' Roses, the logos, that plays a big part. When we were kids, we were looking at the CD album covers. You're like, that's a cool cover. Guarantee it's gonna be good. Get home and be like, what the hell is this shit?
That has happened. I mean, if you ever bought like a record when you're like a young kid and you don't know, or maybe the single, but the rest of the record sucks.
Oh yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, oh god.
We were just many times.
My buddies and I were just talking about like reminiscing about the presidents of the United States of America.
I was just gonna say them, dude. That's who I was just gonna bring up, like them.
Yeah, that record, like there was like 3 great songs on that record, and then like the rest of it, I was like, But like, what an inventive way to like make music, like,
They all did
like
that back then.
Oh man, it's so crazy. But regardless, anyway, Todd, dude, thank you for spending some time with me on the last episode of season 8. Let me pop this up and open here, everybody. If you're on Instagram, and BV, thank you for moderating, per usual. But if you're on Instagram and you love looking at pieces of art that happen to be guitars, then you should follow this account and you should, partake in the coolness that Todd posts, because man, there are some beautiful looking instruments that you pop up there, buddy, every day. So, yeah, man. Anything else you want to leave the people with words of wisdom and looking for a Les Paul?
Just the words of wisdom is play them all, because if you're purchasing something from Sweetwater, most likely you don't have the best. There's other ones that are out there that could be a lot better and speak to you as a forever instrument versus just a now moment instrument.
Right. Unless it's Wildwood. We're huge fans of Wildwood. You can pretty much guarantee you're going to get a good instrument from those guys.
Good point. Absolutely. Go to Wildwood every single time.
Awesome, man. Well, the vinyl has spun. Side B is done. Todd, thank you so much, my friend. I'm sure we'll continue to chat and everything, but I appreciate your time tonight. Everybody, that's it for season 8. We're coming back the end of August. I already have a slew of amazing guests booked for next season, so that's going to be a good one. But take care of yourself, take care of each other, and we'll see you next time.